and welcome to this very special edition of Investors Hangout. Special because this is the 150th episode, and also because today we are celebrating World Savings Day, which is observed every year on the 30th of October all over the world. Now, this fortnightly interaction to help you learn and understand savings and investment issues is brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. Today's episode is also special because we have two very special guests joining us. Sunaina da Cunha, Co-Head Fixed Income, and Keerti Gupta, Chief Operations Officer of Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC. Welcome both of you. According to a 2019 study, only 33% women take independent investment decisions as compared to 64% men. But another investment report in March 2021 revealed that gradually women investors are turning savvier in finance and honing healthier financial habits. Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Funds, with its initiative For Her, is also on a mission to empower Indian women with right knowledge on personal finance management. If you also want to know the secrets to becoming financially savvy, that's what our special guests are here to help you with. Now, while women of the house are often admired for saving money, traditionally the males have dominated investment decisions. But things are gradually changing. And considering your professional experience and expertise, I believe both of you would be the ones making these decisions in your family, or, probably have a major say in them. So Sunaina, how do you look at this transition? What do you think? How far have we come and what changes are still required?
Thanks so much, Ruchira. So yes, I think, women and investing have, traversed a fairly far journey in the last many years. If I look at, in my own family, if I look at, my mother and my grandmother, etc., the kind of, savings and investments they made compared to, what my generation makes. And yes, I'm an investment professional, so let me keep myself out of it. But if I look at the rest of the generation and, how that change has actually been. Women traditionally have always, generally in traditional households have been the ones who managed the household budget. And they've done that exceedingly well, always able, most of the time, to even save from that monthly budget that they have. But traditionally, and I would see it, in, let's say, my grandparents' generation, that money would find its way primarily into gold, or it would be, locked up in the tijori at home. And sometimes it was also find its way into the informal lending market, where, they would maybe lend to friends after doing they had their own ways of doing their own, what we call due diligence. But, within the community, they would probably lend to friends and family, etc. And, that has evolved over a period of time, and hopefully, with a lot of education that is there, with a lot of these kind of platforms, women nowadays, are fairly independent in making, many women are fairly independent in making their own decisions. My husband and I, we jointly plan our finances, we jointly plan our investments. We're planning for our 6-year-old child's future education. So that's the kind of long-term planning that, women are doing nowadays. And I think women have all sorts of goals. They have short-term goals, long-term goals, and they plan accordingly. They're fairly savvy, investors, because they like to do a lot of due diligence, like to do a lot of long-term investing. But as far as how much further we can invest, I think possibly the investors I'm talking about who are financially independent and financially taking a lot of their own decisions, that is still a very small minority in our country. The vast majority is still has a fairly large way to go. I think it is when we have forums like this where we discuss, where people start discussing at the school level, at the family level, where discussions start in terms of what the family investments are like, where the family net worth is. That's when I think more and more involvement of women and more knowledge will get built up.
Over to you, Keerti. What are your views?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Sunaina is saying, is that things are really, really changing. And various aspects plays into this particular change. And one very important aspect is education. When you see more and more female are getting educated out there, I think more and more On one side, they become more comfortable in making those financial decisions, and second, their awareness level help them make those decisions out there. So that becomes one very major shift. I come up and says education is playing one big role, and because of that, you have good amount of trickling effect. Your awareness level have increases. You're far more clear why you want to save, why you want to invest, and then where you want to invest. With the kind of a technology available, when everybody have a smartphone in their hands and the plethora of information is available on that smartphone, you become more and more confident in making those decisions, which earlier, because of the either lack of awareness, lack of information, and the ability to accept various connotations which are coming along with it, for you to execute and understand out there. So I think education has played a very big role. That has made people more aware. That has made people more confident. And to top that, availability of information to everybody in their palm has really made significant change in the women coming into forefront. The second another point which I think everybody starts talking is that you should make decisions independently. And I have a slight different thought process of it. It's not necessarily that you need to make investments decisions independently. Important as you make right decisions. And in that particular process, if you need to seek help, guidance from various people, you should be open to do that, because the quality of you'll be able to improve the quality of decisions that you're making, and ultimately will be able to fulfill the goals and the needs and the dreams of yours.
True, education certainly plays a very important role. Now, Sunaina, why don't you share with us something about your first investment experience? How did it start, and what motivated you to choose investing as a career?
Uh, so, truth be told, I actually started investing from my first salary. Uh, the Birla Mutual Fund is actually my first job. And joining here, I actually started with SIPs. I picked three funds, and I started off with SIPs that, if I still remember right, went on for quite a few years of my initial career. So that's the way I started off on my initial investment journey. In terms of why and how I picked investing as a career, I think I'm very fortunate enough that my parents gave me very early, when I was finishing school, a fair amount of exposure to the different careers that would be available to me, post, depending on what field of study I took up. And my parents themselves spoke to me. They made me speak to friends and family who were who were in those areas, to try and help me understand the various career opportunities, the kind of education I would need to pursue, etc. And I was actually naturally drawn to commerce, which I took up, and then I did an MBA. Possibly in part because that was, my father being, an MD of a finance company, it kind of may have, subconsciously drawn me towards the finance field. But that was the path I pursued. Having majored in finance, that becomes the dream of every finance professional to, actually enter an investment space. And when I joined the mutual fund, I was actually at that point of time given the option to choose equity or fixed income. And contrary to most, advice that I got at that stage, I actually chose fixed income because I thought, this industry, was at a nascent stage, and it was in India, it was going to develop and explode, and that's pretty much the way it's actually panned out.
Okay, Keerti, I'm sure when you would have made your first investment, operationally, it wouldn't have been this easier, compared to what it is today. So, how do you think have things transformed over the years?
Oh, I fully agree. I think in today's world, if I'll explain somebody that how did I make my first investment, you'll say, really? Is it used to happen? You'll feel you're in some stone age kind of a scenario. And to that extent, yes, things have traveled quite a lot today. Everything is at a click of a button. right from getting to know a particular product or an asset class, making the right decisions and the informations that you require, and then finally to execute. It's at a click of a button. May it be, let's take it in financial services, you have to do your KYC, you can do it with your phone and your head. You want to transact, you can do with the same phone. If you want to monitor, you can do again with the same phone. Whatever kind of a changes that you want to make, you want to compare, you want to understand, you want to switch from one asset class to everything. It's just practically at the click of a button. So definitely things have changed drastically out there. When you really want to execute something, operationally things are very different and much easier, simpler, more intuitive in nature.
Sunaina, a lot of Indians still believe that fixed income based guaranteed return products like fixed deposit, PPF, they are good investment options. But with rising inflation, it's important to invest in equities for long term goals, I guess. So, while it could be really difficult to convince someone with a guaranteed return mindset to straight away invest in equity linked products, do you think debt mutual funds can be a good starting point to make them aware of the market linked products and their benefits?
Oh, absolutely, Ruchira. And now there is a fair amount of financial repression that is happening not only in our country but all over the world, wherein the savings of savers are being channelized through high amount of liquidity and low interest rates to borrowers to try and incentivize them to go and invest, build capacities, and try and restart growth. What's happening as a result of that is, you've got very low real yields. Globally, in a lot of the developed countries, you've got negative real rates actually. And so what does it look like in India? Over the last 25 years, on average, if inflation was at about 6%, our repo rate on average was between 6.5%. Today, as we speak, we believe inflation will be closer to 5.5%, but it will be at least another 3 or 4 years before we see the repo rate reach even close to 6%, which means that you are running on very low real yields or inflation adjusted yields, and hence other options which are able to earn you a real return should actually be looked at very carefully, particularly in this scenario. Now, everybody has different goals, your short-term goals, your long-term goals. Depending on, the fact that if you're a conservative investor, you may want to, have up to say, a longer period of time invested in more secured assets, let's say, which your goals, which will, need to be accomplished in the next 4 or 5 years. And beyond that, then you can look, at, let's say, slightly more higher yielding, but slightly higher risk kind of portfolios or opportunities like equity. But I would strongly advise investors to actually seek financial advice through financial advisors. They would be well positioned to help you build an optimum asset allocation based on your risk profile and on your goals. And there's a plethora of funds available even in the fixed income space, straddling duration, straddling credit. So basis your risk profile and basis your goal and the timeline to your goal, you can actually build an optimum risk return profile and portfolio for yourself.
Now, Keerti, considering the current credit culture where everything is available on easy EMIs, what's your advice to youngsters? How can they control their urge to spend and start investing? And what role do you think the industry can play here?
So I think it's there's no harm in spending. I keep saying is if they don't spend, the economy will not grow, and if the economy does not grow, your investment will not give you the kind of a returns. It's important for anybody to spend, but most important part when you're spending or relying, don't fall under any kind of a debt trap. I think spending beyond your means is something which is a problematic area. So I keep saying this. There's nothing wrong in the EMI culture. Let's take an example. My parents built their house when they were closer to retirement, right? But today we understand the advantage of early spending. We understand the advantage of building long-term assets at early in a stage so that it becomes much easier for you to do various others. So let's take an example. I want to do a retirement planning and I know I've repaid my loan much earlier in life. I'm building a far more healthier balance sheet for myself. So I keep saying is there's nothing wrong in the EMI culture. There's nothing wrong in taking credits. Important is for you to understand what is the right credit for you. Are you able to service that particular credit? Are you building the right kind of a cash flows and monitoring them? Are you ensuring that your future goals, it may be for your further educations, it may be for going for a foreign trip, for a holiday, for your marriage, for your kids, for your retirement? Are you taking a holistic decisions rather than just a fun or enjoyment culture? Till the time you are taking a kind of a balanced approach and well thought through approach, I think it's perfectly fine. But now, how do we do it? It's easier said than done. Personally, there are certain kind of a rules that I follow in my life. And the first and foremost things which I say is first be aware of yourself. What is it that you want to do and what are your life goal about it? And then just when you plan them accordingly, things will become much easier. The second important point for you to understand is what is your awareness to any kind of volatility or a risk or behaviors towards either credit or loss if you have into any investments. So you understand your psychological mindset and based on that decide what is it that I want to do, what kind of an asset class I want to make investment, what kind of a product I want to make an investment, what kind of a borrowing I want to do. Once you do it, I think very, very important aspect happens is manage your cash flows. The moment you have managed your cash flows in a nicely manner, then you will never fall in the so-called debt trap and you'll not create the so-called NPAs and the psychological financial for yourself and your family. From the investment perspective, I think I firmly believe into discipline and regular investing. I think it's extremely important for us to understand rupee cost averaging, to understand the advantage of compounding, to understand the values the SIP can bring. I think SIP is such a wonderful product. Every individual, the day they start working, I think should start looking the SIP portfolio into them. Because you really do not understand unconsciously what is the kind of kitty you have developed for yourself. And that kitty would help you meeting your goals, meeting your dreams, will make your balance sheet so healthy that you'll find achieving your dreams far more simpler, far more easier, and far more a healthier way of taking your life, a financially healthy way of leading your life.
And what role do you think the industry can play here?
Oh, I think I would come up and say is my after making the PPF investment, which was my second investment was SIP. And I can tell it to you the kind of benefits I have. I had my marriage with that. I had my house loan repaid with that. I was able to plan everything with that kind of an investment. So I keep telling everybody, please understand and start a SIP as early as possible. If you need to build up a kind of a liability portfolio, please build a liability portfolio at early in a stage. Strike the right kind of a balance. Be very, very disciplined out there. Take a risk which you understand. This is very important. Don't go on the hearsay that my friend have recommended this or ABC have recommended it. If you are making any particular investments in your life, please understand nuances of it. Be confident about it so that tomorrow any consequence happens, you know how to deal with that. Second, very important aspect is learn. Unless and until you learn, you'll never be able to move to the next ladder in your financial stability, in your financial growth out there. It's very, very important to understand the nuances of every product, the kind of a risk associated with, how you're supposed to execute and monitor it, and what are the kind of an impact that it's going to make, both in a good scenario or in a bad scenario. So it's very important for you to keep learning. Once you learn, then only add that asset class to your portfolio. And mutual funds, makes a huge with the investor education programs, the kind of various initiatives they plan. The current 4R as one of such initiative plan, and I think this is such a good platform for people to understand, engage, and demystify uh, the finance as a word. Many a times the investing and finance becomes such a myth and psychological barriers. I think these kind of a programs can help every individuals to meet their financial goals. We can demystify the financial jargons for them. We can help them understand and elevate their knowledge and take their financial stability to the next level. So I fully recommend the investor education initiatives of all mutual funds, and especially the kind of a 4 program for women professionals and women per se is very, very good initiatives.
Well, then, time now to move on to our viewers' questions. Sunaina, the first one has been asked by Ranjana, and she asks, how do you foresee the interest rate outlook for the next 6 months to 1 year? Is it advisable to invest a lump sum in a short duration fund for this period? And among how many funds should she split the amount?
So, the RBI has kept liquidity fairly abundant, and they've been very cautious in their normalization process. They've started on the process of normalization by, initially starting with sucking out a bit of the liquidity through the VRRs. And we believe that given the fact that, there is nascent recovery in growth as for them, and they want to see the growth impulses getting more and more widespread. Coupled with the fact that inflation, while it is will be something that they keep a close eye on, particularly looking at the way commodity prices are, and particularly oil has gone. But it's still within the range of the RBI's tolerance level of 4 to 6%. It is likely that they will, first look at sucking out a little bit or mopping up a little bit of that liquidity, and then look to reduce the corridor before they actually start hiking rates. So what we believe is that they will initially look to hike very small amounts the reverse repo rate in December and in the policy post that. But as far as repo rate hikes, that will probably be a story of 22. So in the next 1 year, if you're looking at it, markets have already priced in a fairly aggressive rate hike. Markets are looking, if you look at the OIS levels, they're actually pricing in close to 130 basis points over the next 1 year. We believe that RBI is not going to hike at such a quick clip. They are going to be much more measured in their hike. But what this has resulted in is very steep yield curves. That's why for an investor, it's best that you try and marry your investment horizon with the investment duration of the fund. So if you're looking at, let's say, a 3 to 6 month kind of investment horizon, then a low duration fund is something you look at. I would suggest, let's say if it's a 6 to 9 month kind of horizon, that a floater fund. But if you're looking at something slightly long term and you're a little risk averse and you want to stay in high quality, then corporate bond fund, banking and PSU short term fund is something you can look at. If you're willing to take a little bit of credit risk and you have a little bit of risk appetite for longer term again, then you could look at credit risk funds as well.
Okay, and is it advisable to invest a lump sum in short duration fund for this period, for a 6 months to 1 year period?
It depends. So if you actually know that you've got that you are actually looking at a particular, there's a particular timeline on that date you're going to remove it, then, you could look at investing in one fund or within a couple of funds. It depends on your overall portfolio. And what the amount is that you're actually investing. So, in light of that, diversification is always something you should look at. But if you're able to actually space out your, the spacing out of your requirement, then it's best to marry that spacing out of requirement, your investment horizon, with the investment duration of the fund. And we've got funds at, regular intervals that, you'd be able to actually try and match from your investment horizon perspective.
Now, Neeta has sent in the next question, and Keerti, she wants to know if she needs to pay capital gains tax while switching from one fund to another of the same fund house. Also, what is the procedure for the same?
So, Neeta, you can definitely make a switch from one one scheme of a particular fund house to another, and depending on the nature of the scheme and the time period that you have, your capital gain tax would be applicable. Let's take an example. You have made an investment in an equity scheme and you're moving from an equity scheme to any another scheme. And the time period that you were holding this particular fund was more than a year. A long-term capital gain tax would be applicable out there. The similar kind of a thing, it was a debt, and if you're moving out from a debt scheme to any other scheme, depending on the duration, the tax would be applicable, the capital gain. Today, when you redeem even either you redeem or you make a switch from one scheme of a particular fund house to another, same fund house, another scheme, the fund house will provide you a capital gain statement. So it becomes much easier for you to understand what is the kind of a capital gain tax you're supposed to file in your income tax returns.
All right. Now, Sunaina, Nirmal asks, how are mutual funds taxed in case of an NRI? And how different are they from fixed deposits?
So, Nirmal, as far as fixed deposits are concerned, you would be taxed at your marginal rate, whereas debt funds do enjoy some amount of advantage. If you invest, if you redeem within 3 years, then short-term capital gains apply, which would be again at your marginal rate. But if stay invested beyond 3 years, then long-term capital gains apply, and then you have the option of either choosing indexation or taking a flat rate without indexation. So that tax benefit actually is there if you invest for a longer period of time with a mutual fund.
Now, Shipra has recently moved abroad for employment purpose, but she wants to continue with her mutual fund investments. She's invested across 5 to 6 schemes. Keerti, does she need to inform the fund companies about this, that she's moved abroad, and what changes and paperwork would be required for this? If you could please help her with the broad procedure.
So, Shipra, the good thing is you can definitely continue with your investment. You need to inform it to the fund house, one, that you've moved. Please inform their new correspondence address so it becomes much easier. If any kind of a communications needs to be provided, they can provide. But predominantly ensure your email is completely updated. The second important thing that you need to do, once you move, if your tax residency status is changing, so let's take an example from a resident Indian, you're becoming a non-resident Indian, it becomes extremely important for you to inform it to the fund house, because that will have an impact on the various other payouts, or the tax implications will be there, and the fund house needs to respond or treat your redemptions and dividend payouts accordingly out there. The second important aspect would be that are you continuing to make, from which account of yours you will continue to make payouts for your SIPs which are there in the system, and so that accordingly when you want to redeem them in future, you'll get money to that particular account. So 2 important aspects, please inform them. Inform if you're changing your bank account through which you will be start making future payouts of your SIP. And if your status is changing from resident Indians to non-resident Indian, inform them so that they do the required deductions, so that in future you do not face any kind of a tax-related issues.
Okay, now, Keerti, Anju wants to know if she can make more than one nominee for her existing mutual fund investments, and what is the procedure to do that?
Very, very simple these days. Definitely you can make more than one nominee. You can change the nominee if you want to during the whole course of your investments out there. The process is very simple nowadays. You can go to the websites or the app of the various AMCs. and they will have the provision to make that kind of a nominee change. If any of the AMCs or any of the investment house does not have an online facility, you can go and give that change in nominee to their respective branches or to the registrar's office, and they will make the change in the nominee out there. Recently, based on the SEBI's guidance, a new central investment portal has been launched, through which you will be able to do various kind of a service related aspects. You can get bank account statements, and over a period of a time, they will provide the ability for you to change the nominee on that particular platform also.
Well, yes, MF Central will hopefully make things much easier for all the investors. And if you want to know more about it, you can go back to the last episode of Investors Hangout where we discussed MF Central in great detail. And the link to that episode has been given below for you to easily access it. Now, Sunaina, Dhriti says, considering the hardships faced by debt funds over the last 1 to 2 years, what are the key parameters that one should look at while investing in them?
Very important to understand what the fund is all about, Dhriti. Do a fair amount of due diligence on the fund house, on what kind of a product you're actually investing in, what the philosophy is of the fund itself, what the mandate of the fund itself is, and what the philosophy of the fund manager is. And then, as I said earlier, also try and match the investment horizon that you have with the investment horizon of the fund, and then hopefully, you'll have a good experience.
All right, today's last question has been sent in by Binita, and Keerti, she wants to know if it's possible to update the communication address for mutual fund investments online. What is the process and its importance, as most communications are made on email these days?
It's possible for every person to update their communication address. Again, I say you can go to a MF House website or their app, and you can upload the required documentation to that, and they in turn will submit this to the KRAs so that your documentation address is updated out there. So, Ruchina, the message I want to pass it on. Today, servicing yourself in the MF industry has become very, very simple, very, very easy. Most of the services are available on their web portal or on their app. As I mentioned just now that you have now an MF Central, you can use the MF Central and make things much simpler. Your static details, let's take an example, your name have changed or your address has changed. You can give this to a KRA so that once you make change at the KRA, automatically this would change for all capital market intermediary, not just for the mutual funds, but your share broker and other places also. You'll be able to. So please use these kind of a platform which has been provided by all AMCs or the KRAs and or the RTAs and MF Central, and you will be able to execute them in a very simple and easy manner.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this episode. Thanks a lot, Keerti. Thank you, Sunaina.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you to all our viewers. Do keep sending us your questions and keep watching this space for more information. And if you like the show, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care. Bye for now.